Hey everyone, my name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at some malicious compliance stories, so sit back, relax and enjoy. Just go home? Okay. This happened a few years back and kinda stunned I'm just remembering this. I was doing a type of program where I was doing gardening and cleaning at a type of reserve. It had a decent sized bilby enclosure. I live in Australia. But it also did programs for special needs kids, host a small farmers market once in a while, and night walks for the bilbies. When I was there, the managers were pretty chill people, a married couple if I recall correctly. They're not the main point of this, Tony is. Tony was pretty much a glorified accountant, but would roam the property like he owned the place. He would bully, micromanage, and would never be satisfied on anything we did, for it was not to his standards. Yeah, he was a prick. We did ask the managers what we should do with Tony. They just replied, "Just nod and do what he says." I took that to heart. Well, one day, Tony was being a major douche and for whatever reason targeted me, like what he normally did but overcharged. My level of freaks to give was running low. I was cleaning in the hall area when Tony came in, his eyes fixed on me. He goes off on the deep end telling me how I am just doing everything wrong and proceeded to tell all the ways I was messing up. It's a broom. How many steps are there? I just let him go. He's sounding more and more like the stuck-up prick that he is. Tony said, "Christ, if you can't do this right, you should just go home." Remember when I said my level of freaks to give were low? Here it was all bottomed out. Malicious compliance time. I am sorry, Tony. I'll get right on that. Yeah, you better. I left the hall, put the broom in storage, grabbed my stuff and walked out. 1 hour before we go home. It takes me half an hour to get home. I walk. Do you see the brilliance in this? When I get to my front door, I get a call. Surprise, surprise, it's the manager. "Hey OP, where are you?" "I'm home." "What? Why?" "Tony told me to go home, so I did." "But he has no authority over you." "Oh, I know, but you told me to do what he said, so I am." There's a pause. "Can you get back here?" "It takes me a half an hour to get back up there, and considering what time it is, there's no point." Another pause. "Ah, I see. See you next week, manager." I hang up. I did get told off for leaving early without telling them. They also told me that I will no longer have to take orders from Tony anymore. I did get the worst jobs on that day, but when I saw Tony and he saw me, he quickly looked away and booked it. Totally worth it. We never had a problem with him after that. I hate people like this, people that don't actually have any authority, but they pretend they do because they like the power, but at least Tony won't be messing with OP anymore. Counting? It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. It's a story from when I was working for a pretty big shop in the DIY segment. We had all kinds of stuff, from wood to plumage to flowers. I was working for the storage unit of the place, along with some more guys, but our staff was utterly lacking. We had to unload the incoming traffic, deal with reclamations, and a bunch of stuff. The most important, however, was that we had to check if all the goods were fine to sell and if there were no discrepancy within the documents. So, one Friday, which are usually the most busy days, there is an abundance of incoming trucks. The storage unit is overflowing with everything, everyone is almost running, trying to sort this stuff out and send it to the trading area to be shelved. By the way, we only had 3 computers available to scan everything, so the program would recognize it and put on stock. Manual input is strictly prohibited, so no one in the office area of our unit can do anything but to work with documents. So the 3 of us waltzing through the shipments are doing our best to be as fast and efficient as possible. Of course, we do neglect some of the instructions for the sake of it. For example, if we know that one of the suppliers only ships packs of 10, then we don't bother opening and counting all of them. We just count boxes. Then our boss marches in. "What are you doing there? Are you sure there's 10 pieces in this box? Are you sure they're not damaged?" Me, not the best speaker ever. Yeah, the boxes are sealed and not damaged, so... Boss interrupting, "Do you know what your job is? You have to open them and see it for yourself." I skeptically looked around and proceed. "We have kind of an emergency. We really have to work quick or else we'll be buried under this avalanche." "Quality is more important, so do your job properly now." Now? Well, okay. Hijinks will ensue. I quickly wrap up my current task and take the next pallet, picking especially tedious ones, with nails and all that jazz. I unwrap it, cut the first box open and start scanning. Normally you scan one and enter the total in the corresponding place. Well, not this time. I scan everything one by one. Every single package. Even those which are easy to count manually. After 2 hours, I was nowhere near the finish, when my co-workers finally dropped a word of my behavior to our boss. He finally shows up. "What are you doing? What takes you so long? Others finished 5 suppliers each, and you're still struggling with that one?" Me, innocently blinking. "What? I'm doing my job as was stated in my instructions. I check the quality and scan everything. By the way, do we have scales here? I'm not sure if this boss has exactly 5 kilograms of nails." By the end of my speech, the boss is red with anger, starts yelling at me and saying for me to work quicker, even if it means skipping some steps, which is, as you can remember, the first thing he told me not to do. And thus, I got my nerves a bit pulled, but then no one ever complained about this issue. Yeah, that probably would have been a bit far. Imagine they emptied each nail box and counted how much one weighed and then counted every single nail in there and measured it to see if it was 5 kilograms. Make 5-year-olds do an 8-step finger painting project? Great idea! This happened a while ago. I was volunteering at a summer camp run for 5 to 9-year-olds by my middle school. I was about 14, but this was my 3rd year working at this camp. Most of the other counselors were college students. For the past 2 years, the camp director was amazing and created a whole book of norms, schedules, and plans for camp. This year, we got a new director, who of course did not read any of the book. I was literally the only counselor who was returning to the camp this year. Everyone else was new. So the old director asked me to help the new one out. When I met the new director, who we'll call Anne, she insisted she knew what she was doing, understood the routines, and didn't want help, especially because I was too young to know what I was doing. Okay, fine, I left her alone. Anne was a nightmare. She yelled at the campers at least twice a day. I mean, yelled. So much, some of the kids cried and wanted to go home and never come back to our camp. She also yelled at the counselors for not knowing what was going on. They were new, of course, and they didn't know what was going on. She didn't bother to teach them or anything. Anytime I asked her a question, she got annoyed with me for bothering her. I was in charge of the art projects for the camp. This meant I independently planned the projects, made sure we had the materials, kept the materials closet organized, and led the projects. This was my summer year in this role, so I knew what I was doing. I had a bunch of projects planned for the first couple weeks with clay, beads, and paint, but they ended up being too complicated and the kids lost interest and started arguing with each other instead. So, as the summer progressed, I mostly stuck to paper and marker projects like origami, posters, drawing. You'd be surprised how many different projects you can come up with just paper and markers. This kept the kids' attention and was easy to clean up, so I stuck with it. One day, Anne called me into the conference room she converted into her office by throwing her papers everywhere on the table and not letting anyone else in. The conversation went as follows. "Your art projects are too simple. Make them more complicated." I tried to do that, for example, a beads project, but it was too hard for the kids. They got confused and frustrated and didn't want to do the project. I told them they were welcome to sit out, but they got bored and started fighting. The simpler projects keep them occupied. "Don't talk back to me." "I'm sorry, I was just explaining." "You don't know what you're doing. You're too young to really understand. Here, do these projects instead." She shoved papers into my hands. This first project requires reading and writing. We're talking about 5-year-olds. "Just do it. I'll come watch to make sure you do." Okay, this project was a travel journal made out of a single piece of paper. They had to do complicated paper cutting and folding, which I couldn't get the hang of myself. Not to mention read the dozen-step instructions and write, but I had my instructions. So I gave 5-year-old scissors to cut up paper, a project I knew full well they couldn't do, and an hour of time. With my previous 2 hard projects, a couple of them couldn't do it. Now I had 20 confused crying campers on my hands and 3 counselors in the room. We tried to help them, but they were bored and couldn't write. Chaos. Basically, the counselor ended up doing the projects for the kids, while half the kids cried and the others played catch with scissors. The director watched this mess without even trying to help and yelled at the crying campers for not doing the project. Everyone hated that, so I assumed nobody would blame me for taking a couple steps out of the next project. It was a 10-step painting project. With some minor tweaks, I made into a 3-step painting project where the end result looked similar. Much better. The kids could do it and actually enjoyed it. And it was Anne's project, so she couldn't yell at me, right? I did the same thing with the rest of her projects. The next week, Anne called me into her conference room turned office. "You didn't do my projects." The end result was the same, I just simplified them some after the travel journals. The travel journals went well. The kids couldn't write or read. Well, you should have helped them more then. You need to learn how to follow instructions. I thought my job was to adapt the instructions to make them suitable for the kids' enjoyment. Just do what you're told. Here, do this project and follow the instructions to the letter. If the project is the same, can I explain it to the campers differently? No. This project was a 12-step turtle flower pot project. The first 5 steps were finger painting. The next 3 steps were a really complicated cutting and pasting design project. The final steps required actually filling flower pots with dirt and planting seeds. Neat project in theory, but I wouldn't do it with little kids. And looking at the instructions, the same project could be done in 4 or 5 much easier steps, but I did what I was told. I read the 12-step instructions to the campers. Nobody can keep track of 12 steps in their head, so they were already confused. One of the other counselors asked if we could simplify it. Nope. It only took 20 minutes before paint was everywhere, kids were throwing scissors, nobody knew what was going on, they didn't want to do this and hated it. Anne came down into this chaos. What's going on here? The project was too complicated for the kids. Well, make it simpler. You told me to follow the instructions to the letter. Fine. This happened again with another project the next day, and the next day, and the next. One day, Anne changed her tune. What's going on here? The project was too complicated for the kids. Well, make it simpler. You told me to follow the instructions to the letter. Look, please just end this chaos. Okay, fine. Now that I'm not disobeying instructions, I can't make the kids suffer just to make Anne miserable. It took about 5 minutes to simplify the project and get the kids engaged. Anne just stormed off. After that, I grudgingly worked with her for 2 more summers, until she left camp because she realized she actually hated kids. She never again told me I was too young to know what I was doing or got upset about my art projects. I'm kinda confused why it took that long for her to realize she doesn't like kids. I'm pretty sure she should have found that out a bit earlier. Hey everyone, I hope you're all having a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to see more videos like it, then click on screen right now. And if you never want to miss out on a video, then hit subscribe. But I will see you all very soon.